When was the last time you did nothing? I don't mean watching Netflix. I don't mean listening to a podcast while you fold laundry. I mean absolutely nothing. You are standing in an elevator for 30 seconds. What do? You pull out your phone. You are waiting for the microwave to beep. What do? You check your notifications. You are at a red light. You glance at the screen. We are the first generation in history that has systematically eliminated boredom from our lives. We treat silence like an enemy that must be killed. But here is the catastrophe. By killing boredom, you have also killed your ability to feel joy. Your brain works on a balance scale. When you constantly flood your system with cheap digital dopamine, the likes, the swipes, the 15-second videos, you burn out your receptors. You numb your own palate. This is why a sunset feels boring. This is why reading a book feels like torture. This is why you can't focus on a conversation with your own child without your hand twitching toward your pocket. You aren't distracted. You are chemically desensitized. You have traded the deep, rich colors of real life for the flashing neon lights of a screen. Today, we are going to stop the IV drip. We are going to learn the monk's secret, that boredom is not a void to be filled, but a gateway to be entered. We are going to reset your brain so that you can finally taste your life again. Chapter 1. The Ancient Echo. The first thing you touch in the morning defines the texture of your day. For the modern mind, the hand reaches out instinctively to the nightstand. The glass rectangle lights up. Before your eyes have fully adjusted to the dark, a flood of information pours in. News from across the ocean, opinions from strangers, the urgent demands of work. Your dopamine baseline spikes immediately. You have not even left your bed, and already you are reacting to the world rather than existing within it. You are swept away by the current before you have even learned how to swim. Now, let us strip this away. We travel back 500 years, or perhaps 1,000. Picture a stone cell in a high mountain fortress. It is cold. The air smells of damp earth and old parchment. A man wakes up. There is no glowing screen. There is no artificial light. There is only the gray dawn filtering through a narrow window. He sits up. There is silence. Absolute, crushing silence. We often romanticize this scene. We imagine the disciplined recluse is instantly peaceful. We imagine he is filled with a serene wisdom that we have lost. But this is a romantic lie. The biology of the human brain has not changed that much in a millennium. When that man sat on the cold floor, his mind was just as chaotic as yours. It craved stimulation. It wanted to know what was happening in the village below. It remembered an argument from yesterday. It worried about the food supplies for winter. The difference is that he had nowhere to run. This is the core of the dopamine detox. It is not a relaxation technique. It is a confrontation. In the modern world, when boredom strikes, we kill it instantly. We swipe, we click, we watch. We treat boredom like a disease that must be eradicated the moment it appears. But for the ancient scholar, or the disciplined Stoic, boredom was not a disease. It was a gate. It was the threshold you had to cross to enter a state of deep focus. Imagine the sensation of sitting in that stone room for 1 hour, then 2, then 3. The first hour is agony. The brain screams for input. It is the same withdrawal a smoker feels without a cigarette. This is the friction of your neurochemistry trying to reset. But if you stay in the chair, something shifts. The noise in the head begins to settle, like dust in a closed room. The craving for the new fades and is replaced by an immersion in the now. The man picks up his pen. He looks at the blank page. Because there is nothing else to distract him, the entirety of his cognitive power is directed at that single point of ink. This is how the great works of antiquity were built.
They were not created by people who were smarter than us. They were created by people who had mastered the art of staying in the room. They allowed the echo of their own thoughts to become louder than the noise of the world. Today we call this deep work or flow state, but it is simply the natural capacity of the human mind when it is not being force-fed digital sugar every 6 seconds. The ancient echo tells us that stillness is not empty. It is heavy. It is dense with potential. When you remove the cheap dopamine triggers, you are left with the raw material of your own intellect. It is terrifying at first, because you are forced to look at yourself without a filter. But once the initial discomfort passes, you find a level of productivity that feels like a superpower. You do not need to move to a mountain or wear a robe to reclaim this. The ancient echo is available to you in your apartment. It is available in your office. It requires only the ruthlessness to cut the cord, to turn off the phone, to sit with the discomfort of silence until it transforms into the clarity of focus. It requires you to be willing to be bored until you become brilliant. We have traded depth for speed. We have traded the profound for the viral. But the trade can be reversed. The path of the disciplined mind is still there, waiting under the noise. If you wish to walk this path with us and uncover the methods to reclaim your attention, then make sure you are subscribed to this channel. We are building a library of focus in a world of distraction, and we want you here for the next chapter. Chapter 2. The Glass Prison. Imagine a cell. Not one made of cold iron bars or damp stone walls. This cell is elegant. It is smooth to the touch and glows with a warm and inviting light. It fits perfectly in the palm of your hand. You do not feel like a prisoner when you hold it. You feel like a master. You feel like a giant, gazing down upon a miniature world that dances for your amusement. But make no mistake, it is a prison nonetheless. This is the glass prison. In the previous chapter, we walked the path of the ancient ascetic who sought silence in the mountains. He sat in a cave of stone to escape the noise of the village. He walled himself off from the world, not to escape reality, but to confront it. In that stone enclosure, there were no distractions. There was only the man and his mind. It was a terrifying solitude at first, but eventually it became a forge. The restriction created freedom. By limiting what his eyes could see, his mind learned to see everything else with absolute clarity. Now look at the modern posture. We do not sit in caves. We sit in comfortable chairs in climate-controlled rooms. Yet we are hunched over. Our necks crane downward. Our shoulders round forward. We are physically mimicking the posture of someone protecting a precious ember in a storm. But we are not protecting anything. We are consuming. The device in your hand is a window. That is what they tell us. It is a window to the world. Through this glass, you can see the pyramids of Egypt and the streets of Tokyo. You can hear the voices of millions. It promises infinite connection and infinite knowledge. But a window is supposed to be something you look through while remaining firmly planted in your own room. This glass is different. It pulls you through. You unlock the screen. The light floods your retinas. This is the first step into the enclosure. The physical world around you begins to dissolve. The texture of the chair beneath you fades. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen disappears. The rhythm of your own breathing goes unnoticed. You have left the room. You have entered the digital ether. In this space, time operates differently. You intend to stay for a minute, just a quick glance to check the status of the world. But the design of the prison is cunning. It is a labyrinth with no exit signs. You swipe a finger, and the world refreshes. A new image, a new headline, a new burst of color. It is the perfect inversion of the monk's experience. The monk sat in stillness and found that after an hour, his mind began to settle like silt in a glass of water.
The longer he sat, the clearer the water became. The modern man stares into the glass rectangle and finds that after an hour, his mind is churned up. It is a storm of fragmented thoughts and half-finished emotions. We see a tragedy and feel sad for 3 seconds. Then we swipe and see a comedy and laugh for 3 seconds. Then an advertisement. Then an argument. This rapid switching of emotional states is unnatural. It is a violence against the human spirit. No animal in history has ever been subjected to such a chaotic barrage of conflicting signals. We are dragging our primitive biology through a gauntlet of hyperstimulation. We emerge from a session in the glass prison, feeling exhausted but wired. We feel empty, yet overfilled. The genius of this prison is that the door is locked from the inside. There is no guard forcing you to stay.
There is no shackle around your ankle. You are holding the key. You can press the button. You can turn the screen black. You can put the device on the table and walk away. You are physically free to do this at any moment. And yet, you do not. This is the tragedy of the glass prison. It relies on a paralysis of the will. The ancient monk trained his will like a muscle. He lifted heavy mental burdens until he could command his attention to stay fixed on a single flame for hours. We have allowed our will to atrophy. We have traded the hard labor of focus for the easy comfort of distraction. We are like a man who has laid in bed for so long that his legs have forgotten how to walk. When he tries to stand, he stumbles and immediately crawls back to the comfort of the sheets. When we try to put the phone down, we feel the withdrawal. The silence of the room feels heavy. The boredom feels sharp and prickly. Our own thoughts feel loud and unmanageable. So we reach back for the glass. We unlock the cell. We step back inside where the noise drowns out the quiet desperation of being alone with ourselves. We must recognize the nature of this trap before we can escape it. It is not just a bad habit. It is a fundamental shift in how we exist in time and space. We have traded the deep, slow rhythms of the natural world for the frantic staccato beat of the algorithm. We are the cicada trapped in the jar, beating its wings against the glass, hoping that if we just fly fast enough, we will find a way out. But the way out is not through the screen. It is not in the next video or the next article. The way out is to stop. It is to realize that the glass wall is not a window to the world, but a barrier that keeps you from it. The monk in his stone cell was the freest man on earth because he owned his attention. We, roaming the entire digital globe, are the captives because our attention is owned by everything else. The first step of the detox is not to throw the phone away. It is to look at it and see it for what it truly is. It is a tool that has become a cage, and you are the only one who can open the door. Chapter 3. The Great Withdrawal. The screen fades to black. The last pixel of light vanishes and leaves you sitting in the sudden gloom of your own room. This is the moment the glass prison door clicks shut, but you are not locked in. You are locked out. You have just initiated the disconnect, and for the first few seconds, it feels like relief.
You take a breath. You stretch your neck. You tell yourself that this is good and that you are reclaiming your time. Then the silence begins to settle. It does not feel peaceful. It feels heavy. The air in the room seems to thicken. In the absence of the constant digital chirp and the infinite scroll, the world becomes uncomfortably still. This is not the serenity of a mountaintop. This is the vacuum of a sealed chamber. Your hand twitches. It is a subtle physiological betrayal. Your thumb seeks the phantom friction of glass that isn't there. You feel a vibration against your thigh, even though your pocket is empty. This is the great withdrawal. It is a fascinating and terrifying biological event. Your brain has been conditioned to expect a reward every few minutes. It anticipates the dopamine hit, the way a dog anticipates a meal when the bell rings. When you deny it that feed, it does not simply go to sleep, it panics. The neural pathways that have been etched deep into your mind by years of overstimulation begin to fire in distress. You might find yourself standing up and walking to the kitchen. You open the refrigerator and stare at the shelves. You are not hungry. You are looking for a change of state. You close the door and walk back to the couch. You sit down. 10 seconds pass. You stand up again. The silence is ringing in your ears. This restlessness is not a defect in your character. It is a chemical crash. You are experiencing the friction of a mind trying to slow down from 1,000 miles an hour to a complete stop. The brakes are screeching. In the ancient world, stillness was the default state. A monk sitting in a stone cell did not have to fight a war against 1,000 engineers in Silicon Valley. He had to fight his own thoughts, but the environment was an ally. The wind through the trees and the rising sun were slow events. They matched the biological rhythm of the human animal. Today we are mismatched. We are biological entities living in a digital habitat. When you unplug, you are violently tearing yourself away from that artificial habitat, and your system goes into shock. The boredom hits you like physical pain. We have forgotten that boredom is not a problem to be solved. It is a signal. In the modern age, we treat boredom as if it were a disease. We medicate it immediately with glowing screens and endless information. But when you strip that medication away, you are left with the raw symptom. You feel exposed. You feel agitated. This is where most people fail. The discomfort becomes an itch that demands to be scratched. You rationalize the relapse. You tell yourself that you need to check your email for work. You tell yourself you just need to see the weather forecast. You bargain with your own resolve. It is just one look. It is just 1 second. But you know that is a lie. The brain is screaming for input because it is terrified of what happens when the noise stops. When the external noise stops, the internal noise gets louder. This is the true terror of the great withdrawal. It is not just about missing the internet. It is about meeting yourself. Without the distraction of the feed, you are forced to sit with your own anxieties. You are forced to hear the thoughts you have been drowning out with podcasts and playlists. The silence acts as a mirror. You look around the room and notice the dust on the bookshelf. You hear the ticking of a clock you usually ignore. The texture of the fabric on your chair feels suddenly distinct. Your senses are waking up from their digital coma, and the intensity of reality is overwhelming. You must stay in the chair. You must let the wave of agitation wash over you. It will peak. It will feel unbearable. You will feel like you are wasting time, because you have been trained to believe that constant activity is the only form of productivity. But this sitting is the work. This resistance is the training. If you can endure the first hour, the fever begins to break. The panic signals from your brain start to weaken when they realize no reward is coming. The dopamine receptors begin to downregulate. The hum of anxiety lowers its pitch. You are still bored, but the boredom changes texture. It stops feeling like a cage and starts to feel like an open field. The great withdrawal is the price of admission to a deeper life. You have to walk through the fire of your own restlessness to get to the clear water on the other side. You are detoxing from the addiction to speed. You are learning how to exist in the present moment without a filter. It hurts because it is healing. The wiring is knitting itself back together. You are becoming whole again. Chapter 4. The mud settles. There is a moment after the fever breaks when the world feels strangely quiet. You have survived the initial clawing of the withdrawal. The phantom vibrations in your pocket have ceased their constant nagging. You are no longer reaching for the black mirror every 3 minutes to check for a signal that never came. This is the phase where the turbulence of the last few days begins to slow down. The storm has passed, and you are left standing in the center of a silent room. It feels heavy at first. It feels unfamiliar. But this weight is not a burden. It is the return of gravity to a life that has been floating in zero gravity for too long. Imagine your mind is a glass of water scooped from a rushing river. For years, you have been shaking this glass. Every notification was a shake. Every scroll was a shake. Every rapid switch from an email to a video to a text message was a violent agitation of that vessel. As long as you kept shaking it, the water remained cloudy. It was a swirling, opaque mess of silt and sand. You could not see through it. You could not see the bottom. You could not even see the nature of the water itself, because the mud was suspended in every single drop. The modern world is a machine designed to keep that glass in perpetual motion. It wants the mud to stay suspended. It profits from your confusion and your inability to see clearly. When the water is cloudy, you are easy to direct. You are easy to anger and easy to distract. You reach for the next stimulus because you cannot bear the sight of the gray, swirling mess inside your own head. So you shake the glass again, hoping that more movement will somehow bring clarity. But it never does. It only adds more chaos to the mixture. The monk understands a principle that the modern world has forgotten. You cannot force the water to become clear. You cannot push the mud down with your fingers. You cannot filter it out with sheer willpower while you are still running around. The only way to clear the water is to leave it alone. You must place the glass on a flat table and take your hands away. You have to let time do the heavy lifting. You have to endure the stillness. This is exactly what has happened to you over the last few days of silence. The heavy particles of cheap dopamine are finally sinking to the bottom. The constant demand for high-intensity stimulation is drifting down like sediment. As the mud settles, the water at the top begins to reveal its true quality. It becomes transparent. This clarity is what you have been starving for, without even realizing it. Suddenly, the simple things do not feel painful anymore. Before this detox, reading a single page of a book felt like trying to climb a mountain in loose gravel. Your eyes would slide off the page. Your mind would beg for a flashing light, or a loud noise, or a shock of outrage. But now the mud has settled. You look at the page and the words stay still. You read a sentence and you actually understand it. You look out the window and the movement of a branch in the wind is enough to hold your attention. You realize that what you previously called boredom was actually just peace. Your baseline for stimulation was so broken that normal life felt like a gray void. You were an addict, accustomed to fireworks, wondering why a candle flame looked so dim. Now that your eyes have adjusted, the candle flame looks bright. It dances, it has nuance and warmth. The world has not changed. The content of your reality is exactly the same as it was a week ago. But the instrument you use to perceive it has been cleaned. This settling process reveals the landscape of your own mind. When the water was muddy, you could not see the rocks or the plants or the life at the bottom of the glass. You only saw the blur. Now that the water is clear, you can see your own thoughts. You can distinguish between an impulse and a genuine desire. You can see the difference between what you want and what the algorithm wants for you. This is the return of your agency. When the water is muddy, you are reactive. You move wherever the current pushes you. You are a slave to the next shake of the glass. When the water is clear, you can choose where to look. You can decide what matters. The settling of the mud is the return of your ability to choose one thing and stick with it. It is the restoration of your attention span. The anxiety that used to hum in the background like a refrigerator motor has gone silent. You are present. You are here. The digital noise has receded into a distant memory, and in its place, you have found something far more valuable. You have found the solid ground of your own awareness. The mud has settled. The water is clear. Now you are finally ready to see what lies beneath. Chapter 5. The Candle in the Dark. Imagine a room filled with blinding strobe lights. Thousands of them are flashing at once in a chaotic rhythm of white and neon. In the center of this room stands a single burning candle. You cannot see the flame. The artificial brilliance washes it out completely. You might know the candle is there, but its light is rendered invisible by the overwhelming intensity surrounding it. The strobe lights represent the notifications, the infinite scrolling, the video loops, and the constant demands for your attention. The candle is the task right in front of you. It is the page of a book, or the lines of code, or the conversation with a friend, or the simple act of sitting still. When we spoke earlier of the mud settling, we were describing the process of letting the chaos subside. Now we must speak of the result. We must speak of contrast. The modern mind struggles to focus, not because it lacks the capacity, but because it lacks the necessary contrast to see the flame. We are trying to admire a subtle light while standing in the middle of a fireworks display. The dopamine detox is not merely about suffering through a period of boredom. It is about dimming the artificial lights so the flame becomes visible again. This segment is called The Candle in the Dark, because that is the environment required for deep focus. Let us step back into the monastery of the mind. Imagine the scribe in a cold stone room working on a manuscript. He works for hours on a single capital letter, adding gold leaf and red ink with agonizing precision. To the modern observer, this looks like madness. We ask ourselves how anyone could possess such patience. We assume the ancients had a superpower that we have lost. They did not. Their biology was identical to ours. The difference is that the scribe did not have a device in his pocket offering him the entire world at the tap of a finger. His dopamine baseline was set to the pace of drying ink. Ours is set to the refresh rate of a high-definition screen. Consider the physiology of sensitivity. If you eat a spoonful of processed sugar and then immediately bite into a wild strawberry,
the fruit will taste sour and bland. Your palate has been overwhelmed by the intensity of the refined sweetener. But if you drink only water for a day, that same strawberry tastes like a confection. It bursts with flavor. This is the reality of your neurochemistry. Your receptors are not static. They are calibrated by your environment. By removing the floodlights of high stimulation, you are not just removing pleasure. You are recalibrating your ability to feel it from subtler sources. This phase acts as the crucible. When you first extinguish the screens and the noise, you are left in the dark.
This is the moment most people panic. The silence rings in your ears. The lack of input feels like a physical weight pressing down on your chest. You reach for the phone like a phantom limb. This is the withdrawal speaking. It is the brain frantically searching for the strobe lights because it has forgotten how to navigate by candlelight. But if you hold your ground, something remarkable happens. Your eyes adjust. The darkness softens, and suddenly, that single candle flame becomes the most interesting thing in existence. You find yourself able to read a paragraph without your eyes darting to the next one. You find yourself listening to a person without planning your response while they are still speaking. The text on a page acquires texture. The act of writing a sentence feels significant. The focus that seemed impossible yesterday becomes natural today, because there is nothing else competing for your gaze. Great work requires this kind of singular light. You cannot build a legacy while drowning in distraction. The architect needs the stillness to see the structure before it is built. The writer needs the quiet to hear the sentence before it is written. This is the secret that the ancient traditions practiced. They knew that depth requires a scarcity of breadth. To go deep, you must narrow your field of vision. You must be willing to sit in the dark room until the candle is enough. We often fear that by disconnecting we are missing out. We worry that the world will move on without us. But the reality is that the noise is just noise. It is a distraction from the signal. When you reduce the input, the quality of your output increases. The candle in the dark is a metaphor for the return of your agency. It is the moment you stop reacting to the flashing lights of the world and start acting from a place of intention. The boredom you fear is actually the doorway. It is the threshold you must cross to find the place where the work happens. As your sensitivity returns, you realize that the world is far richer than you remembered. The simple tasks are not boring. They are complex and nuanced, but you were too overstimulated to notice. The mud has settled and the water is clear. Now you can finally see what was at the bottom of the glass all along. You have found the light in the dark, and it is more than enough to see by. Chapter 6. The Feast of the Senses. Imagine a king sitting at a banquet table that stretches beyond the horizon. The table groans under the weight of every delicacy imaginable. There are mountains of spiced meats, rivers of wine, and towers of sugared confections. The king eats constantly. He never stops to digest. He never allows himself to feel hunger. After years of this relentless consumption, a strange tragedy occurs. The king can no longer taste his food. The sweetest honey feels like sand in his mouth. The finest wine tastes like tepid water. He demands spicier dishes, louder music, and brighter colors just to feel a fleeting moment of sensation. But the more he consumes, the less he feels. This is the state of the modern mind. We are the kings at the banquet of information. We have unlimited access to the most potent sensory stimuli in human history. Every time you unlock your screen, you are served a buffet of hyper-palatable content. You see the most beautiful people, the most tragic news, the loudest arguments, and the funniest jokes, all within the span of 30 seconds. It is a feast of the senses that never ends. Yet, walk through a modern city, or look at the faces on a subway train, and you do not see people who look satisfied. You see people who look starved. There is a glazed look in the eyes of the scroller. It is the look of someone who has eaten too much, but received no nourishment. This is where the ancient wisdom of the monk becomes a practical guide for the material world. The monk understands a principle that modern commerce tries to hide. That principle is contrast. Without silence, you cannot appreciate sound. Without hunger, you cannot enjoy food. And without boredom, you cannot achieve focus. When you enter the phase of the dopamine detox that we call the feast of the senses, you are not actually adding anything new to your life. You are simply stepping away from the banquet table. Initially, this feels like deprivation. The silence of a room without a podcast playing in the background feels heavy and oppressive. The walk to the grocery store without music feels long and dull. Your brain, which has been calibrated to expect high-speed entertainment, screams that something is wrong. It tells you that you are missing out. But if you hold your ground, something remarkable happens. The sensory adaptation begins to reverse. When you stop flooding your system with artificial sweetness, the natural sweetness of an apple becomes shocking. When you stop blasting your ears with constant noise, the sound of the wind moving through the trees becomes a symphony. The monk sitting in a stone cell is not bored. To the outside observer, his life looks empty. There are no screens, no notifications, and no drama. But inside his mind, the resolution of reality has been turned up to the maximum setting. Because his baseline for stimulation is so low, small things become significant events. A ray of sunlight moving across the floor is not just background lighting. It is a dynamic, shifting interplay of physics and time. The texture of a wooden bowl in his hands is not just a container. It is a landscape of grain and history that he can feel with his fingertips. This is the paradox of the detox. By restricting your input, you upgrade your experience. You are trading the cheap, frantic stimulation of the digital world for the rich, high-definition texture of the real world. Think about the last time you truly watched a sunset. Not just glancing at it while checking your messages, and not just taking a picture of it to post for others to see. I mean, standing there, doing absolutely nothing else, and watching the colors shift from gold to violet. For the overstimulated mind, this is agonizing. The brain demands a cut, a swipe, or a new tab. It cannot tolerate the slow pace of nature. But for the detoxed mind, that sunset is a feast. It is visually richer and more complex than anything a screen can render. The return of your senses is the reward for the discomfort of withdrawal. You begin to notice the nuance in conversations. You hear the tone of voice in your partner or your friend, picking up on emotions you would have missed when you were half distracted. You taste your coffee. You feel the cold air on your skin. The world stops feeling like a flat, gray backdrop for your phone and starts to feel like a living, breathing place again. We often confuse hedonism with happiness. We think that the pursuit of pleasure means chasing the highest highs as often as possible. But the true hedonist is the one who can derive immense pleasure from the simplest things. The person who needs a carnival to feel excitement is a slave to the carnival. The person who can feel excitement watching rain fall against a window is free. This segment of your journey is about reclaiming that freedom. It is about cleaning the lens of your perception. You are scrubbing away the grime of digital excess so that you can see clearly again. You are not becoming a monk to escape reality. You are adopting their discipline to finally encounter it. As the artificial noise fades, the signal of your own life becomes clear. You realize that the world was never boring. You were just deaf to its frequency. Now, you are tuning back in. The feast is not on the screen. It is right in front of you, waiting for you to look up. Chapter 7. The Long Afternoon. The sun has climbed to its highest peak and begun its slow descent. This is the time of day that tests the resolve of any mind seeking stillness. It is the long afternoon. In the modern world, this is the time when the coffee wears off and the fatigue sets in. It is the hour when the office worker reaches for a sugary snack and the student reaches for the phone. It is the graveyard of focus. But here in the quiet space you have carved out for yourself, the experience is entirely different. Without the constant digital interruptions, time behaves in a way you have likely forgotten. It stretches. It expands. The hours between 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock usually pass in a blur of notifications and scrolling. We are accustomed to fast-forwarding through the dull moments of our lives. When we stand in a line, we escape into the screen. When there is a lull in conversation, we check the feed. We have become masters of skipping time. We treat moments of inactivity as errors to be corrected, rather than spaces to inhabit. Now that you have removed the device, the fast-forward button is broken. You are forced to live through every single second of the afternoon. At first, this feels like a punishment. The silence rings in your ears. You look at the clock and feel certain that an hour has passed, yet the hands have moved only 10 minutes. This is the friction of the detox. Your brain is a frantic animal looking for a way to speed things up, looking for the dopamine hits that usually warp your perception of time. It wants the montage, not the long take. Consider the monk in his cell 500 years ago. He did not have the option to accelerate the day. If his task was to copy a manuscript, he had to dip the quill and form the letters one by one. If his task was to sweep the courtyard, he had to watch the broom move across the stone. There was no escape hatch. There was no alternative reality to jump into. He had to make peace with the slowness. And in that peace, he found something that we have lost. He found the texture of reality. When you stop trying to kill time, you begin to respect it. You notice the way the light changes on the floorboards as the sun moves west. You hear the specific rhythm of your own breath. The boredom that terrified you an hour ago begins to curdle into something else. It transforms into presence. You realize that the anxiety you felt was not caused by the slowness of the world, but by the speed of your mind. Your internal gears were spinning at 1,000 revolutions per minute, while the world was turning at 1. Now, as the afternoon wears on, your gears begin to slow down. You are syncing up with the rhythm of the room. This is the secret that the ancient echo whispered to us. Life is not short. It is only short when we are distracted. When you sit in the long afternoon without stimulation, life feels incredibly long. It feels durable. A single hour of deep focus contains more lived experience than a week of distracted skimming. You begin to understand why the masters of the past could produce works of such immense complexity and depth. They had the time because they did not throw it away. As you sit there, the urge to check for messages fades. The phantom vibration in your pocket disappears. You are no longer waiting for the next thing to happen. You are fully inhabiting the thing that is happening right now. It might just be sitting in a chair. It might be reading a book. It might be staring at a wall. But for the first time in years, You are actually there for it. You are not splitting your consciousness across a dozen different tabs. You are whole. The mud has settled, and the water is clear. The fear of boredom is revealed to be a paper tiger. You find that you can endure the silence. More than that, you find that the silence is a resource. It is a vast open plain where your thoughts can finally walk without running into a billboard or a flashing light. The afternoon is long, and that is its greatest virtue. It gives you room to think. It gives you room to be. You have reclaimed the hours that the screen stole from you. As the light begins to fade and the day moves toward evening, you do not feel drained. You do not feel that frantic exhaustion that comes from processing too much information. You feel a heavy, grounded solidity. You have lived a full day. You have stood still while the world turned, and in doing so, you have taken ownership of your own time. The sun dips lower, the shadows lengthen. You are ready for what comes next. Chapter 8. The Armor of Silence. You have endured the withdrawal. You have sat in the mud until it settled and the water became clear. You have learned to endure the crushing weight of the long afternoon without reaching for a screen to speed the passing of time. Now you stand at a precipice. The detox is technically over, but the danger has only just begun. You are about to step back into the current of the world. This is the most critical phase of the journey. The moment you leave your sanctuary of focus, the world will rush in to reclaim its territory. It does not do this with malice, but with the sheer mechanical force of habit and noise. The modern environment is engineered to shatter silence. It abhors a vacuum. As you re-enter the bustle of daily life, you will feel the friction immediately. The notifications will stack up like dead leaves against a fence. The demands of others will pull at your sleeves. The visual noise of advertisements and headlines will claw at your peripheral vision. If you step into this storm without protection, you will be undone in an hour. Your brain, sensitized and raw from the detox, is now hyper-aware. It is like fresh skin after a burn. Every sensation is amplified. If you are not careful, you will swing from the extreme of deprivation to the extreme of binging. This is where the ancient discipline offers its most potent tool. It is not a weapon of attack, but a method of defense. It is the armor of silence. In the monastic tradition, silence is not merely the absence of speaking. It is not simply turning off the radio or closing a door. Silence is viewed as a heavy, tangible substance. It is a structure you build around your mind. When you wear the armor of silence, you create a physical buffer between a stimulus and your response to that stimulus. Consider the person without this armor. They are walking through a city or scrolling through a feed. A notification sounds. Instantly, their head turns. A controversial headline appears. Instantly, their blood pressure rises. Someone speaks a harsh word. Instantly, they snap back. They are a bundle of exposed nerves. They are slaves to cause and effect. There is no gap between the event and the reaction. They are played like a piano by their environment. Now visualize the mind protected by the armor of silence. You are walking through that same chaotic city. The sounds are just as loud. The lights are just as bright. But they do not touch the core of who you are.
The notification sounds, but it hits the armor and falls away. You hear it, but you do not obey it. You choose when to look. A chaotic situation arises at work. The panic of others crashes against your silence and dissolves. You do not absorb their anxiety. You remain an observer behind the glass of your own discipline.
This is the psychological superpower of the detox. By starving your dopamine receptors, you have regained the ability to pause. That pause is everything. In that tiny gap of silence lies your freedom. It is the difference between an animalistic reflex and the human choice. Wearing this armor requires a deliberate effort. It feels heavy at first. In social situations, you might feel the urge to fill every quiet moment with chatter, or to check your phone the second a conversation lulls.
The modern world tells you that silence is awkward. It tells you that a pause is a sign of incompetence or disinterest. You must reject this conditioning. You must learn to sit in the silence of a conversation without fidgeting. You must learn to walk from your front door to your car without plugging in headphones. This silence is not passive. It is an active containment of energy. Think of a steam engine. If the steam is allowed to escape in every direction, it generates no power. It just makes a hissing noise and dissipates into the air. But if you contain that steam within thick steel walls, the pressure builds. The silence compresses your mental energy until it becomes strong enough to move the wheels of a train. When you refuse to spend your dopamine on cheap distractions, you are conserving that pressure.
You are keeping your fuel within the engine. This is why the focused mind seems so formidable to others. They can sense the contained energy. They can feel the weight of your attention because it is not being scattered to the winds. As you move forward from this detox, do not view silence as something you do only when you are alone. Carry it with you. Wear it into the meeting room. Wear it into the grocery store. Wear it into the chaos of traffic. Let the world scream for your attention. Let the digital cicadas buzz until their wings break. You are safe inside the armor. You have reclaimed the sovereignty of your own mind, and no noise is loud enough to take that away from you again. Chapter 9. The Sovereign Mind. We have arrived at the final gate. The tremors of withdrawal have faded. The armor of silence is strapped tight around your chest. You have learned to endure the boredom, and you have learned to feast on the simple details of a texture or a shadow. Now we ask the most important question of all. Who is in charge of this silence? For years, the throne of your attention has been empty. It was not truly empty, of course. It was occupied by a rotation of usurpers. A flashing light would sit on the throne for 3 seconds and command your eyes to move. A sudden notification would kick the door down and seize the crown for a minute. Anxiety would storm the castle and hold your focus hostage for an hour. Your mind was a kingdom without a king. It was a chaotic marketplace where the loudest merchant made the rules. This is the state of the modern mind. It is a reactive engine. It does not act. It is acted upon. It bounces like a pinball between bumpers of outrage and desire and fear. It thinks it is free because it moves quickly, but it is only moving because it is being hit. But you have cleared the room. You have swept out the debris of cheap dopamine. You have weathered the storm of the great withdrawal. Now you walk into the center of your own mind and you sit down. This is the sovereign mind. To have a sovereign mind is to reclaim the executive power of your own biology. It is the ability to choose what you think about, and more importantly, it is the ability to choose what you do not think about. It sounds simple. It sounds like a small thing. But in a world designed to fracture your attention, this is a superpower. Consider the monk in his cell. To the outside observer, he looks like a prisoner. He sits on a hard floor. He eats simple food. He does not see the flashing lights of the city. He does not hear the gossip of the market. The modern world looks at him and sees a man who is missing out.
they see a man who has less. But the monk is not the prisoner. The man scrolling through his phone on the subway is the prisoner. The man on the subway believes he is the master of the world because he holds all the information of humanity in his hand. Yet he cannot look away. He is physically incapable of sitting still for 10 minutes without checking for a digital pulse. He is a puppet dancing on strings of light. The algorithm knows his fears better than he does. The algorithm knows his desires before he feels them. He is not the customer. He is the product. The monk sits in silence, not because he is forced to, but because he is the ruler of his own domain. He can stare at a blank wall for an hour and find a universe of texture in the plaster. He can direct his focus like a laser beam. When he decides to read, he reads. When he decides to think, he thinks. When he decides to sleep, he sleeps. This is the promise of the dopamine detox. It is not about suffering for the sake of suffering. It is about training the brain to obey your commands rather than the commands of a silicon chip. It is about restoring the hierarchy of your own psychology. When you achieve the sovereign mind, you realize that focus is not a strain. We often think of concentration as a tightening of the muscles, a furrowing of the brow, a gritting of the teeth. We think we must force the mind to work. But that is only necessary when the mind is fighting against itself. That is only necessary when one part of you wants to work and another part of you is screaming for a distraction. When the dopamine pathways are reset, the internal civil war ends. Focus becomes a state of relaxation. You slide into the work like a hand into a tailored glove. You look at a complex problem, and you do not feel the urge to run away. You simply begin to solve it. You have the patience to untangle the knots. You have the cognitive endurance to read the long paragraphs. You have the emotional stability to handle boredom without panicking. This is where great work comes from. The monuments of human history were not built by minds that fragmented every 6 seconds. They were built by sovereign minds. They were built by people who could hold a single thought in their head for days and weeks and years until it became a reality. The detox is not just a cleaning process. It is a coronation. You are taking back the keys to the castle. The noise of the world will still be there. The digital cicadas will still scream outside your window. The glass prisons will still trap the millions who refuse to wake up. But you will be different. You will walk through the noise without letting it touch you. You will carry a stillness inside you that cannot be shaken. You have reclaimed your attention. You have reclaimed your time. You have reclaimed your life. The mud has settled. The water is clear. The mind is yours again. Chapter 10. The Gatekeeper. Now that the mind has reclaimed its sovereignty, there remains one final and perpetual task. This is the duty of maintenance. It is the understanding that the chaos of the world has not disappeared simply because you have found a moment of silence. The noise is still there. The digital carnival is still spinning its wheels and flashing its lights just beyond the horizon of your attention. The difference is that now you have built a wall. But a wall requires a door, and a door requires a guard. This brings us to the concept of the gatekeeper. In the architecture of the modern mind, the front door has been removed. We have lived for so long in an open-plan existence where every notification walks right into our living room without knocking. The erratic demands of the world enter our consciousness instantly. A buzz in the pocket becomes an immediate shift in focus. A flash on the screen becomes an immediate redirection of thought. We have lived without a threshold. We have allowed the street to merge with the sanctuary. The gatekeeper is the psychological mechanism that restores the threshold. It is the mental faculty that stands between the sensory input and your reaction to that input. In the neuroscience of addiction, this is often discussed as impulse control or cortical inhibition. But in the narrative of your own life, it feels much more like a person standing watch. It is the part of you that refuses to be a passive recipient of the world. Imagine your attention as a high-tower room. Before the detox, the stairs were open and anyone could climb up. Every advertisement, every piece of outrage, and every sudden urge to seek comfort simply walked up the stairs and took a seat at your table. The room was crowded. You could not hear your own thoughts over the chatter of 1,000 uninvited guests. Now you have cleared the room. The mud has settled. The candle is burning. But the guests are still downstairs. They are banging on the door. They are shouting your name. They are promising that if you just come down and look at one image or read one headline, you will feel satisfied. The gatekeeper is the one who goes to the door. He does not open it wide. He slides back the viewing port. He looks at the impulse. He asks a simple question. Do you belong here? This hesitation is the most powerful tool a human being possesses. It is the pause between the stimulus and the response. The modern world is designed to destroy that pause. Algorithms are engineered to make the slide from seeing to clicking frictionless. They want the door off the hinges. They want the path from the eye to the finger to be a straight line with no checkpoints. When you install the gatekeeper, you are reintroducing friction. You are creating a gap of time. It might be only a second. It might be the time it takes to take one breath. But in that second, you regain your humanity. The impulse arrives. It says, check the news. The gatekeeper steps in. He holds the line. He looks at the urge and acknowledges it exists. He does not fight it with rage. He does not scream at it. He simply observes it. He says, I see that you want to check the news, but the master of the house is working. You cannot come in right now. This interaction happens 100 times a day. At first, the gatekeeper is weak. The intruders push past him. They shoulder the door open and rush the stairs. But with every act of refusal, the gatekeeper grows stronger. His shoulders broaden. His voice deepens. He stops the intruders with a mere glance. You begin to realize that you are not the urge. You are the one who observes the urge. This separation is critical. If you believe you are the hunger, then you must feed. If you believe you are the boredom, then you must seek entertainment. But if you are the one watching the boredom from behind the gate, then you are free. You can let the boredom stand on the porch until it gets tired and walks away. And it will walk away. That is the secret the gatekeeper knows. Every urge is a wave. It rises and it crashes, but it eventually recedes. If you do not open the door, the wave breaks against the wood and drains back into the ocean. There is an immense dignity in this. It is the dignity of the closed door. A mind that is open to everything is a public square. It is dirty and loud and full of strangers. A mind that has a gatekeeper is a private garden. It is cultivated. It grows only what you choose to plant. As you move forward from the detox, this is your daily practice. You are not cutting yourself off from reality. You are simply vetting what is allowed to touch your soul. You are deciding that your attention is too valuable to be stolen by a vibration in your pocket. You are deciding that the sanctuary you have built is worth defending. The armor of silence you wear is not heavy. It is made of these small moments of refusal. The gatekeeper stands ready. The world knocks. And for the first time in years, you have the power to decide if anyone is home. Final transformation, the switch. You have returned from the silence, but you remain unchanged by the noise around you.
The final transformation is not a flash of light or a thunderous revelation. It is the quiet click of a lock falling into place. You look at the black mirror in your hand, and you see only glass and metal. The compulsive itch to scroll has vanished. It has been replaced by a deep and steady reservoir of attention. You walk through the crowded streets where neon lights scream for your gaze, yet you choose exactly where to look. This is the switch. It is the distinct realization that your focus is a muscle you have finally trained to hold a heavy load. You are no longer a leaf blown about by digital winds or the frantic demands of an algorithm. You are the stone in the river. The water rushes past you, but you remain rooted in your own purpose. The detox is over, but the discipline remains as a permanent guard. You have simply reclaimed the most valuable asset you possess. Your mind is yours again. You are finally awake.